My toxic biological mother cruelly humiliated the love of my life, completely unaware that she was digging her own financial grave. For an entire year, my handsome boyfriend, Julian, pretended to be a struggling, underpaid mechanic who could barely afford rent. My mother, a terrifyingly arrogant and status-obsessed aristocrat, absolutely despised him for being poor and ruining her perfect family image. Yesterday, I brought Julian to our luxury mansion, and she unleashed her absolute worst, most toxic behavior. "Get your filthy, cheap boots off my imported marble floors, you pathetic beggar!" she screamed, violently throwing a stack of cash directly at his face. She actually slapped him, called security, and forced them to drag him out into the freezing heavy rain. "You are marrying the Duke's son tomorrow, and that piece of trash is dead to us," she hissed, locking me in my bedroom. I cried fake tears and fell to the floor. But the truth was, I wasn't heartbroken at all. I was the only person in the entire world who knew Julian's terrifying, hidden secret. The poor mechanic my mother just assaulted was actually the supreme CEO of the Vanguard global banking empire. The very next day, I was forced to stand at the altar in a $1 million white wedding dress next to an arrogant fake groom. My mother was proudly raising her champagne glass to the elite crowd, celebrating her ultimate greedy victory. But suddenly, the deafening roar of a massive military helicopter completely shattered the stained glass windows of the church. The chopper landed violently in the courtyard, blowing away the wedding flowers and sending the wealthy guests into a blind panic. My mother laughed, assuming the royal guards had arrived to arrest a trespasser, but instead, 50 heavily armed elite federal tactical agents marched down the aisle and perfectly bowed to the man stepping out of the helicopter. Julian walked into the church wearing a flawless custom designer suit, radiating absolute, terrifying billionaire dominance. My mother physically stumbled backward, dropping her expensive crystal glass as her face turned completely white with sheer terror. Julian didn't look at her. He walked straight to the altar, handed the federal agents a glowing digital foreclosure document, and took my hand. "I just bought your entire family trust, your mansion, and your massive debts," Julian announced coldly to my horrified mother. The armed agents violently slammed the fake groom against the wall and arrested my mother for decades of massive corporate tax fraud. She collapsed heavily to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to save her from total bankruptcy. I elegantly lifted my wedding veil, looked down at her ruined face, and whispered, "Know your place, Mother." Julian and I walked out of the church together, leaving her completely destroyed, bankrupt, and rotting in a federal prison cell. My arrogant billionaire boss forced me to clean up trash at his luxury wedding. He and his cruel bride wanted to humiliate me in front of hundreds of elite guests, but they had absolutely no idea who was actually hiding behind my cheap glasses. I'm Alara, and I am not just a pathetic underpaid corporate secretary. I am an undercover senior federal inspector specializing in taking down corrupt billionaires. For 2 agonizing years, I played the role of a weak, invisible servant. I quietly fetched their coffees while secretly hacking into their offshore bank accounts. My boss, Julian, had stolen billions of dollars from innocent pensioners to fund his lavish lifestyle. And his beautiful, toxic bride, Isabella, was completely complicit in his massive fraud. On their wedding day, Isabella made it her personal mission to torture me. She deliberately threw a full glass of dark red wine right into my face. "Know your place, garbage," she laughed, while Julian smirked in his custom white tuxedo. I didn't cry, and I didn't run away in shame. I simply wiped the wine from my eyes and reached into my cheap catering apron. I pulled out a glowing red remote control and stared directly into Isabella's soul. With one satisfying click, I completely hijacked the massive LED screens above the wedding altar. Instead of romantic photos, high-definition security footage began playing for everyone to see. It was Isabella, passionately kissing the best man in the bridal suite just an hour ago. The entire ballroom erupted into chaotic gasps as Isabella dropped to her knees in sheer panic. Julian's face turned purple with rage, but his anger didn't last long. Before he could scream, the heavy stained glass doors of the church violently burst open. 30 heavily armed FBI tactical agents stormed down the aisle with their rifles raised. They slammed Julian against the pristine white altar and violently slapped handcuffs on his wrists. Isabella screamed hysterically, begging for Julian to save her, but he was completely paralyzed with fear. I slowly took off my cheap glasses and dropped my stained apron onto the marble floor. Underneath, I was wearing a dangerously sharp, custom-tailored designer suit. The tactical commander walked up to me and saluted perfectly in front of the terrified elite crowd. "Target secured, Chief Inspector," he announced as Julian's jaw dropped in absolute horror. I walked right past the sobbing bride and looked my ex-boss dead in the eyes. Today, they are sharing a concrete prison cell while I hunt down the next billionaire.
No, it can't be you.
Yes, Julian. It's me.
The evil stepmother violently fired me from my own mansion, completely unaware of my terrifying true identity. I am Alara, the original billionaire wife and the biological mother of the little girl she was torturing. 3 years ago, my husband's greedy new mistress sabotaged my private jet, leaving me for dead in a fiery crash. But I survived, and I returned to my own home, disguised as a pathetic, invisible nanny. For agonizing months, I swallowed my pride and endured the stepmother's brutal slaps and daily humiliations. I did it all just to protect my 5-year-old daughter from her toxic, gold-digging claws. But yesterday, Isabella finally crossed the ultimate unforgivable line. She staged a fake kidnapping, brutally hit my little girl, and blamed it all on me so she could steal the entire family trust fund. "Get out of my house, you disgusting trash!" she screamed, throwing my cheap bags into the pouring rain. Julian, my supposed grieving husband, just stood there in his expensive suit and watched her throw me out like an animal. But those pathetic idiots didn't realize I had already planted hidden cameras in every single room of that massive mansion. Today, I didn't return wearing cheap, dirty nanny clothes. I violently kicked down the massive front doors wearing a custom designer power suit, flanked by 30 heavily armed federal agents. Isabella dropped her expensive champagne glass, her perfect face turning pale white in pure, unadulterated horror as she saw my face. You died in that crash," she stuttered, physically stumbling backward and falling to the marble floor. "Did I?" I whispered coldly, elegantly tearing her fake autopsy report into tiny, useless pieces. I snapped my fingers, and the federal agents immediately slammed the screaming stepmother against the cold marble wall. Julian fell heavily to his knees, sobbing pathetically and begging for my forgiveness when he saw the undeniable proof of her crimes on the glowing screens. "I am taking my daughter, my house, and my $50 billion empire back," I announced to the dead silent room. I picked up my crying daughter, held her tight, and watched the FBI drag the screaming traitors away in heavy steel handcuffs.